much for joining us on this beautiful afternoon. Just a short week for many, a difficult week for so many others. And we want to begin by saying that we're thankful. We're thankful for you, for your support, for your friendship, for spending time with us today, and wanting to learn more about what is next for the Latinx community after the so much awaited election of 2020. And I guess officially we're still waiting for official results, although it seems like it's going to go a certain way. So we are so happy that you are here again, and we hope that you and your loved ones are staying healthy. I have an amazing group of people joining me today, and I am completely convinced that you will leave this video podcast or whatever this is with much more knowledge than when you came in. And for that, we want to just dive in immediately, because we only have an hour of your time, and we hope that you will enjoy it and that you will share with your friends and your loved ones. And also, please make sure that you put your comments, questions, thoughts on this on the chat, so we can address those as we go. I want to thank everybody on the team at Latino Memphis, particularly Shali and Dylan for putting this together. And without further ado, let me go ahead and make the introductions to this wonderful panel. Hola a todos. All right, so let me start on I guess it's my upper right above me, Laura Vasquez. Hola, Laura. All right, so Laura Vasquez is the Associate Director of Immigrant Integration Initiatives at Unidos US, formerly known as NCLR. Unidos US is the largest national Latino civil rights advocacy organization in the United States. She works with Unidos US affiliates such as Latino Memphis to expand and sustain their immigration legal services and programs. Prior of joining Unidos US, actually before at Unidos US, she conducted legislative and administrative advocacy to advance just and humane reforms to the current immigration system. And prior to joining Unidos US, she served as a constituent caseworker for Congresswoman Holmes Norton, assisting DC residents with their immigration applications. As a Congressional Hispanic Caucus Initiative Fellow, she monitored efforts to address laws passed in 1996 that impacted immigrants. Her background includes research on Mexican migration to the United States and the role of nonprofits in advocating for the Latino immigrants. Laura holds a master's in Latin American Studies from the University of California, San Diego, and a BA in Political Science and Spanish from Kenyon College. Laura, thank you for being here. So excited that you could join us. We're going to go from DC to, well, I was going to say Memphis, but actually Colombia, although he is a very well-known face in Memphis, and we're so happy to have Bernardo Zapata. Bernardo serves as the pastor for multi-ethnic ministries at Bartlett United Methodist Church in Bartlett, Tennessee, where he has been for the last 21 years. He has called Memphis his home after migrating for his loved Colombia with his wife, Amanda, who is another great person. Amanda works at Granwood Elementary in the ESL program, and that stands for English as a Southern Language. And their two children, Laura and Camilo. The Zapatas probably consider themselves as Southern as pecan pie. Bernardo earned his Master's of Divinity from Memphis Theological Seminary, and he's a bivocational minister working also as an engineer for a local manufacturer of parts of military aircraft. So he has a super diverse background. Bernardo has been a volunteer for a long time in the Memphis nonprofit sector. I'm proud to call him a friend and a board member of Latino Memphis. So, he has made this personal to him. He wants to continue building a more welcoming and inclusive community for the growing and diverse population of immigrants and the US-born Latinos that make up the Latino community in the Mid-South. Bernardo's prayer is for God to equip him with a clear vision of how to engage a community formed by people of all colors that value our humanity over all else, to lead a community that speaks as many languages and still communicates through the universal language of love, and love for your neighbor. Last and certainly not least, Stacy Hammond. Stacy is the senior immigration attorney here at Latino Memphis, where she has been working, well, officially 5 years, but for all the hours that she puts on this, it's maybe more like 7 years that she has accumulated. Stacy represents clients in affirmative cases with the USCIS, including relative petitions, asylum, new and non-immigrant status visas, and special immigrant juvenile status. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Before the Memphis Immigration Court, Stacy represents clients seeking asylum, cancellation of removals, and adjustments of status. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about what this means in plain English in a little bit. Prior to joining Latino Memphis, Stacy served as an attorney advisor at the Memphis Immigration Court from 2013 to 2015. She's a 2012 graduate of Penn State Dickinson School of Law and is a licensed attorney in the state of Pennsylvania. All right. Wow. I mean, seriously, if there's a more qualified group of people to talk about immigrants, Latinx after the election at this time of the day, please let me know, because I want to be there. But certainly I can guarantee you this is the place to be right now. So we want to keep this, again, a super casual conversation. I'm going to be asking some questions to each one of the panelists, but they will also be, chiming in and jumping on as they think that they have other things to add. And certainly, we want you, our friends who are watching us, to do the same and doing this through the chat. Okay, so Laura, let me start with you, because this is a question that I think a lot of people have in their minds. And I'm just going to say, like, hey, what happened? Like, a lot of people are saying, a much larger percentage of Latinx, Hispanic, Latinos, however you want to call us, people voted for President Trump this time than in 2016. Can you tell us a little bit about who are these voters? Why? How? Are you surprised? Was this expected?
Well, sure. Thanks, Mauricio. And I'm so excited and thrilled to be part of the conversation with some of my favorite people. And like you said, I'm really, grateful for the opportunity to talk with you. Have worked with Latino Memphis for many years. And so this is just really exciting to, talk through some of these things, because I think we saw a lot of mixed messages right after the election. And so now, as we are able to kind of distill some of that information, I think we can all be good, sort of advocates for getting accurate information out. And so one thing that I think is really important to make clear to everybody is that we did see a historic turnout for Latinos in this election in 2020. 15 million Latinos turned out to vote, a record number, I think as a result of many, many years of community-based organizations and investments by local partners across the country who have worked diligently, year after year to make sure that Latinos have accurate information about how to register to vote and how to be able to cast a ballot. And so as a result of that, Latinos this year made up 13% of the electorate. That's the second largest group of voters behind white voters. But, as you said, it's a very diverse group of voters. So it's hard to, put everybody into one box. 7 out of 10 voters did vote for President-elect Biden, and a majority of Latinos in every state voted for President-elect Biden. But certainly we saw that because President-elect Biden underperformed in certain states, then the Latino vote made a difference actually more in the Trump turnout in certain states. So Latinos made a difference in Arizona, in Florida, and Nevada. And both parties should take note of that, because obviously Florida went for President Trump and Arizona and Nevada went for President-elect Biden. So it's critical to both parties to make sure that they're making that critical investment and making sure that they're reaching out to our community to vote.
So some of the numbers that you have shown are very astonishing, right? 15 million people, the second largest block of voters. I mean, do you feel that moving forward, political parties will pay more attention to the Latinx vote, or are we not there yet?
I think we are. We have. It's always work at election after election to make sure that we explain to candidates and to parties that investment can't happen, in the weeks or months leading up to an election. It's really critical that investment is made early. What we saw in Texas and Florida is that there were some investments by campaigns, but they were made far too late. So at Unidos US, and I know that this is something that, the folks at Latino Memphis know, is that civic engagement is a critical cycle. It's a continuum of engagement that has to be sustained. So we think about it as soon as someone becomes eligible to become a US citizen, once they've met all those requirements, it's critical to take that step to become a citizen, to be able to cast a ballot. So it's citizenship, then being able to register to vote, and then being, actually turning out to vote. And that's something that, has to be explained and demonstrated to our community year after year, month after month. So we're always looking to highlight the efforts that are being made around citizenship, around voter registration, because we know that, voting is not something that just happens every 4 years. We need to make these critical investments so that our community turns out for city council races, mayoral races, and certainly we know that in 22, there's going to be critical Senate races and critical House races again. So I think that the message is getting clearer and clearer to the parties and hopefully to candidates, but it's something that we know we'll continue to have to make those cases.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I have heard the statistic from Unidos US in the past that also 1 million Latinos and Latinas turn 18 every year. So, the number of the electorate is growing by significant numbers. But you're right, and I think we saw this year a younger voter participation, and hopefully we can continue this trend. I want to highlight what you said about, this work has to be early and it has to be constant in order to keep people informed. So when it comes time for any type of election, they know who the representatives are. So before we jump into Stacy, and thank you for giving us this picture from the national perspective. One of the things that I think many in the Latinx community, and in all fairness, allies and supporters and employers, many are expecting the new administration to make some significant changes to the immigration. We cannot say immigration law because that's just not. The president, as we know, cannot sign. The president can sign things into law, but the president doesn't change the law by herself or himself. But certainly there are some certain expectations from many in this community that in the first few days some things will change, will take effect. Can you elaborate about, from your perspective, what do you expect to see? What changes do you expect to see as it refers to immigration specifically with the new administration?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we're actually seeing in these days, this week, if in fact, before we even get to day one of a new administration, the people who are being nominated to be in leadership positions for the administration are critical. What we saw in the last 4 years were, rotating acting directors, acting secretaries who, really were making dramatic changes and creating chaos for career staff who have worked in the immigration agencies. And so one of the things that we're paying very close attention to, and Unidos US has a project, Proyecto 20, where we're trying to make sure that the administration reflects the country and looks like the people who are in the country. So we're making sure that as President-elect Biden is thinking about his nominees, not only do they reflect the diversity of the country, but that they have the expertise to come in and lead. And so we were really thrilled this week to see that President-elect Biden has nominated Alejandro Mayorkas to be the secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. It's a massive
first Latinx person and first immigrant, right, to ever hold that.
That's right. Yeah, a tremendous background, a refugee from Cuba who became a naturalized citizen. He, was in the Obama administration when DACA was implemented in 2012. And really, I can speak personally to the level of engagement that he had with advocates on DACA implementation. Mauricio, he came to the Unidos US, our spring event, our Latino Advocacy Days, where he spoke directly to our community and talked about the implementation of DACA. He wanted to hear directly how was our community responding to it? Were people coming forward to apply? What were the things that needed to be either better explained or changed? And they did, in fact, make changes to DACA over the course of the Obama administration that were really important that they'd heard from our community. So, in this time, I think certainly these appointments are critical. We're looking not only now, we're thrilled about Alejandro Mayorkas' nomination, but the people who will be in the leadership positions at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and Customs and Border Patrol are going to be really important to see how both the morale and the important changes that need to be put into place in these agencies are super important. And then, of course, we know that there will be some executive orders that the new administration will rescind or take back. They may put into place their own executive orders. So, for instance, the new administration could reinstate DACA so that initial applicants could come forward and apply for the first time, as the Supreme Court seemed to indicate should happen. So there's a lot that could happen by executive order. It's also super important, you said the title of this chat is like, what's next after the election? Well, we still need to see what happens in Georgia. That'll be so important to see, what's going to happen legislatively. You still need 60 votes to get a lot of things through the Senate. So it's a big question of, even getting 50 plus, Vice President Harris to be able to break ties won't pass big pieces of legislation. So bipartisanship is still necessary, as you've heard me say for many, many years while I've been here in DC for Unidos US. But I think that between having the right personnel, an administration that understands that there is executive authority to make some important changes, not only for those, young people who came to the country and don't have a legal status right now, but because of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals that was established in 2012, they've been able to have work permits and protection from deportation. So it's important, I think, now under a new administration for us to advocate not only for expansive protections for people who fit into those categories, it's certainly there could be strengthened protections. One more group that I'll toss out there that's very important and timely are the statuses of temporary protected status holders. There's 411,000 about people who have deep roots in the United States. They've been here for decades and cannot return to their countries of origin because of natural disasters like what we've seen in Central America recently. So making sure that that is something that the administration can do is give those important protections for people with temporary protected status. And certainly, I think all of us have seen the value of immigrants in our economy and keeping it going during this pandemic. So there's a lot of room for the administration to recognize the contributions of essential workers.
Well, I mean, you can see that Laura and her team are going to keep the new administration super busy with with these policy suggestions and expectations that are good not only for immigrants but for the country as a whole in so many topics that you have touched. So let me jump at Stacey really quick, because Laura is talking about like a national view at the policy level. You in turn know more or less important complement that work with boots on the ground. Stacey, you are representing hundreds of people in Memphis, inside the immigration court and with USCIS. How does all of this sound to you? I mean, so somebody actually just posted on the chat, oh well, another president, another day. What does this mean to you and specifically to your clients?
Yeah, I mean, having experienced the last 4 years of the Trump administration, I can tell you for immigration attorneys as a group, and also immigrants that are working their way through the immigration system, it's been a really tough 4 years, right? The Trump administration has made change after change within the immigration context over the last 4 years in a deliberate attempt to prevent people from obtaining legal status in the United States. We've seen the various attorney generals that have come through the Trump administration certify cases to themselves, which is just basically them handpicking whatever immigration court case that they want and making a decision on that case, and making some really bad law out of those cases, basically gutting asylum law as we know it, eliminating the judges' abilities to control their own dockets with continuances and things like administrative closure, which is a temporary closure of a case. So on a practical level, having the Biden administration come in and be more immigrant friendly is going to make a huge difference, right? The new attorney general can recertify cases to himself and kind of reverse some of those policies that the Trump administration put in through case law. They can the executive actions, like Laura said about DACA, right? Not only allowing initial applications to go forward, but also reversing the Trump administration's policy that the renewals were only for 1 year, right? And giving those recipients 2 years for each renewal, right? So practical things like that make a huge difference in terms of who the president is. You also can look at things like enforcement priorities. So right now, under the Trump administration, everybody's a priority, right? You get pulled over for a broken taillight in Memphis, and the next day you're in an immigration detention center in Louisiana, right? And so we hope and anticipate that the Biden administration will lay out some better priorities and actually have priorities, right? Instead of everybody being a priority. So that way, just the normal average person isn't just being torn away from their family and away from their work and all of that, and being thrown in an immigration detention center, and the consequences of all of that.
So wait, I mean, I get it, right? But you mentioned that the new administration could be a little friendlier to immigrants. For those who are new to this type of work, could you explain us a little bit? Many people think like, wait, the judicial system is supposed to be neutral and fair. I mean, like all of these laws are passed by Congress. I mean, I understand that you just gave us a really good explanation of how the president or the attorney general can change priorities, procedures. But I thought that judges were completely objective, neutral, and fair. Is that not the case? You don't have to get in trouble with any attorney, with any judge, because I know you have to face them next week. But in general, we're not talking about Memphis. We're talking about this system.
Yeah, generally. So the immigration court system is housed within the Department of Justice. So the immigration judges that sit across the country, including here in Memphis, are employees of the Department of Justice. They are hired by the Attorney General. They can be fired by the Attorney General. They so they also can be subject to the political whims of the administration, right? And so because they're housed within that Department of Justice, they're subject to the political goings on of the government. So like I mentioned earlier, things like the Attorney General being able to certify their case, right? So this is a case that has been heard by the immigration judge, been appealed to the Board of Immigration Appeals, going through the normal judicial process, right? And then all of a sudden the Attorney General just randomly picks a case, right? And issues a decision that based on whatever he wants to base it on, right? And so that's not necessarily, oftentimes going against what the Board of Immigration Appeals and the immigration judge have ruled, right? And so it's kind of this extrajudicial action that they take. There is a movement to try to get the immigration courts out of the Department of Justice, so that way it's a separate court. This movement is supported by groups like the American Immigration Lawyers Association, the American Bar Association, the Federal Bar Association, but we need a Congress that can actually pass this and actually implement this, a new court system. And so, no, I mean, they're not fair. They're not, I mean, if you look at some of the statistics when it comes to, say, for example, asylum, there are judges in immigration courts across the country that deny 95, 97, 98% of all asylum cases that come before them, right? That's not an impartial juror. That's a judge that's going to deny all the cases that come before them, right? Those numbers, I don't know the exact numbers for the judges here in Memphis, but they're high, right? And so going into court and knowing that you're probably going to lose and preparing your case for the appeal, right? Not necessarily even for the immigration judge level.
Yeah, and I think this underlines the importance of what Laura said of having a strong Congress and a strong Senate. House and Senate. We don't want to get people in a super detailed immigration 101, but maybe that is immigration 101. I mean, this would be almost the equivalent as if all the judges, imagine the civil and criminal judges in the state of Tennessee who have to answer to the governor. Imagine if the governor said, you know what, starting tomorrow, go ahead and deny all civil matters and civil cases related to related to evictions or related to it would be weird if the mayor or the governor was telling judges what to do and how to rule on those cases. And for what I hear you say, the president does have and the Department of Justice have a say so on how these appointed judges rule on some of the cases. They can provide some directiveness. Before we move to Bernardo, just because I think a lot of people don't know that Memphis has an immigration court and a USCIS office. Can you tell a little bit, briefly in a couple of minutes, if every city has an immigration court, how busy this immigration court is, how big is it, small, just a little overview about the immigration court here locally.
Yeah, so there are, I don't know what the current number is. There is about 60 immigration courts across the country. And so as you would imagine, there's a number of courts that are in places like Texas and California, and they have generally bigger courts just because of the populations of those states. The Memphis Immigration Court has a jurisdiction, so they cover cases for anyone who lives in the entire state of Tennessee. So even if you live in Chattanooga, you have to come to Memphis for court. They cover all of Arkansas, so even if you're in Northwest Arkansas, you come to Memphis for court. Northern Mississippi. So it's a huge jurisdiction that the court has. Currently we have 4 judges, although there's a couple of judges that have been coming from Louisville, Kentucky, to handle some cases here in Memphis. The courts are backlogged across the country, but also here in Memphis. So just by way of example, I have multiple trials that are scheduled for 2024, right? So 4 years from now, I can tell you where I'm going to be on September 20th, 2024, right? And so those are clients that have already filed their application. They're ready to go forward, but the court just is so backlogged that they just have to wait their turn in order to get their case heard. And so it's so the immigration court here in Memphis is essentially just again, a little bit of a 101. The immigration court is for individuals who the government is actively trying to remove or to deport. And so it's a chance for them to either prove to the judge that they have some kind of legal status in the United States, or to file an application with the judge to obtain some kind of legal immigration status, a green card, asylum, things like that. And so it's a busy court. And so that's, again, through different mechanisms, a new administration can kind of clear out some of that backlog as well.
Laura, does that mean that perhaps a new administration, with the support of a new Congress, could bring more resources, like adding judges? I mean, 60 courts for the country adds up to about, yes, some states may have, like Stacey said, more than one court. We think about California, right? But the Memphis court serves the entire state of Tennessee, Arkansas, part of Mississippi, Stacey, perhaps. It's a pretty large jurisdiction. So Laura, can a new administration, is it potentially possible that adding more judges, more resources to this backlog?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, and it should be tackled kind of in a holistic way with a lot of different really smart policy solutions that people have been making for a long time now, because of the experienced, attorneys like Stacey, who raise, these are the problems, here are how these things should be addressed. So for example, having more attorneys and access to attorneys makes courts run smoother. That's why it's really important for there to be access to immigration attorneys like Stacey. And I mean, it's like a very privileged number that get the opportunity to come to Latino Memphis and be represented by somebody with Stacey's experience. So there's a great movement in various parts of the country, really led by the Vera Institute for Justice, to put some state or local funding into immigration legal services, where we're using, state and local resources to provide legal representation, the same way that happens, in civil courts. Having something like that is proven to make immigration courts much more efficient. Some of this is really just a matter of efficiencies, having legal representation, having more courts, having policies that make things easier to dismiss cases that don't even need to get in front of a judge. So there's a lot of, detailed proposals that really, if treated in a holistic way, would then, and that's something where it's both, the Department of Justice and Homeland Security. Like, really, one of the proposals that we'll be making to the new administration is having more coordination amongst agencies. Immigration touches all these different parts of our federal policies. And so we need somebody that, when we see a mess at the Department of Justice and no one in the Department of Homeland Security is aware of it or interested in addressing it, somebody that will play that, critical role of bringing agencies together and saying, here's how we need to tackle this in a holistic way that's going to really make a difference, rather than, putting more resources into getting more courts and more judges is great. But there's a lot more that could be done.
I love that. So,
yeah, I mean, if I can just make one point on that, just to kind of clarify something that Laura said, is that in immigration court, you are not entitled to an attorney appointed by the government. You're entitled to have an attorney, but it's at your own cost, or if you can find a pro bono attorney. And so there are many people that are forced to go to court because they can't afford a private attorney, and the local nonprofits, if there are local nonprofits that do immigration work, are overburdened by the clients that they already have, and so they can't necessarily take advantage of that. And so that's definitely a huge issue at the immigration court. And that doesn't matter. You could be 4 years old in immigration court and have to represent yourself. So this is a large issue in a lot of situations.
And I'll take this opportunity to make a plug-in for Latino Memphis, for the other nonprofits in Memphis that are part of the Immigration Coalition, and really across the country that do this kind of work, right? I mean, and Stacy is an example, but just one example of all the pro bono. Well, we're not a pro bono attorney, but all the attorneys that are affordable. Because, like you said, I mean, it sounds like our Constitution and due process offers people who are in danger of losing their freedom an attorney, and you just confirm that in the immigration court, if you don't have if you don't have the means to support an attorney, you are out of luck. And for those who are watching us and are not familiar with this, oftentimes the detention centers and these courts are in very remote locations where it's very, very hard for people to have access to legal representation. So with that, let me jump into Bernardo, because this is also, I mean, we hear from Laura about policymakers, people in DC, just pushing and pushing back, and it's almost like this policy tango that they're doing. And, you hear from Stacy, who's actually facing individuals every day inside court and outside court. But elected officials and policies, elected officials get to those positions because people vote for them. And we noticed that in this particular election and in 2016, both candidates were catering to people of faith, particularly President Trump. He was, oftentimes he refers to to people of faith as his supporters. From your perspective as a pastor in a church in the South, why do you think people of faith are so passionate about the topic of immigration? Sometimes in support of, and sometimes against, but nevertheless very passionate about this topic. What can you tell us about that?
First of all, let me apologize. I have been in and out of this conversation. I have had issues with my internet connection.
We've been talking about you while you were gone, so no problem. We understand these things kind of roll that way. But go ahead, Bernardo.
Yeah, but the thing is, we have to remember in the setting we are now in the South, religious positions are usually very conservative, and this comes from way back in the 1700s, when these very conservative religious positions settled in this area. So for the most part, in churches in this area, you don't find a lot of support for immigrants. Unfortunately, that's the mindset that has been created for years and years and years of listening to the same accord, especially when the discourse you hear from the pulpit is that everything is a sin and everything has to be punished. Unfortunately, that's the situation. That's the reality in our midst for the vast majority of churches. But even though the paradigm seems to be so grim, there are some light there. And there are some congregations that are very much aware of the importance of having an immigration policy that affects everyone. And especially that immigration policy has to have this component of grace that is so needed for those who are in the shadows to understand that they are human beings, that they are children of God as anybody else, and they have the same rights that anybody else. Perhaps the laws today do not reflect that, and as I said, the mindset of many do not reflect that. But in many instances, you can see different spots here and there where a new understanding of the meaning of immigration and the meaning of the life of these peoples into the life of the entire community is changing little by little. It's not going to happen over time. The fact that we have a new president today doesn't mean that we are going to have people in the churches inviting our immigrants to come. that's not the case, unfortunately. But hopefully, one step at a time, we are going to be able to make ground and to build that foundation for our immigrants to be able to be received and to be welcome the way we all should be. Uh, eh, that's the way I say it today.
So, and thank you for being so candid, because I know this is delicate, right? And I want to emphasize, this is by no means, we're not attacking, or we're not generalizing every single congregation in the South, or even across the country. But I mean, I hear you saying that sometimes it appears to be a conflict between, faith and law, and I have heard some people saying, well, I would love to be supportive, but these people have broken the law, and therefore they're criminals, and therefore, they just, I'm just, my faith does not allow me to support somebody who has broken the law. It seems that many churches do have these theological conflicts, not only with immigration, but with so many other social issues. Moving forward, I mean, do you feel that the church plays a role, the church leaders play a role in beginning to change the narrative, and if they do, uh, is the will there, or I remember Micah Grindstein, a rabbi from Temple Israel here in Memphis, uh, a couple of years ago, when we were seeing massive raids in Memphis. He was saying, if if your pastor, you know, uh, if your pastor, or rabbi, or church leader, or congregational leader is not talking about immigration this Sunday, you should be questioning that. You should be asking, like, why are we not talking about this? So my question to you: Are church do church leaders have a responsibility, and is there willingness to start talking about these things with their congregations in an open way?
Yeah, I think you touched the right point there, Mauricio. Again, we have this mindset in the South, where punishment is, and what they call law and order should prevail. We forget that those laws sometimes are made just to oppress and punish people. And in this particular case, with the immigration laws that we are applying now, that's exactly the intent, to punish and oppress people. But I think it's going to be a very, very long uh, way to get to where we all can understand uh, in the significance of what an immigrant is capable of doing for this society and for these communities. Um, uh, if racism has been ingrained in this part of the country for these many years, of course, immigration is part of that same racism that has been part of this. And we see it not only when it comes to the treatment of immigrants, but also with any people of color. Uh, we have this tendency to create laws just to keep them in a position and in a place where they cannot defend themselves, or they cannot do anything for themselves. So I think, my personal perspective, I am part of a congregation that is um, quite conservative, but I have been able to somehow stand up, and without politicizing my sermon or my discourse, at least I've been trying to open their ears and eyes to the reality of what's going on right there. And I think that what is most important is perhaps that when uh, religious leaders start having these conversations with people on the ground, with those who have been affected by all of these policies, perhaps at that point in time is when some of the most staunch conservatives are going to start thinking differently, and are going to start looking at the beauty, at the immense power of immigrants, and what they can do. these people love this country, and sometimes we just build this barrier between us and them, and then we won't allow them to show us how beautiful their support and their willingness to do something great for these countries. But I think everything is relational. We need to start building relationships one-to-one from the pulpit to everywhere in staff in churches and everywhere. We need to start building those relationships. And I think that's the message that we need to put out there. Come here and let's look at these people and see the beauty of creation in these people.
I love what you said about building relationships. And Brian Stevenson says that, the idea of proximity, you can only build a relationship when you're close to somebody. And I can just say that I think your congregation is very fortunate to have you there as a spokesperson. And we sincerely apologize your courage to speak up and to speak loudly about these issues. But it's about that, right? And if you were not where you are, the people in your congregation probably wouldn't know anybody else that is an immigrant, so I think that's amazing. So I know we've been talking about immigration because we have a national expert in immigration and we have an immigration attorney, but what is going to happen after the election is not only about immigration. We only have about 15 minutes left for today's conversation. So let me go back to Laura. Outside of immigration, what other policy priorities are for the Latinx community after the election? I mean, certainly immigration is an important part of who we are, but that's not all. Anything else that is on the radar?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. Absolutely. I mean, I think for our community, a lot of the issues are top of mind for the country. So Latino voters went to the polls with 3 priorities in mind. Those were the pandemic, jobs in the economy, and healthcare costs. I think that's pretty reflective of what is top of mind for a lot of people across the country. So for Unidos US, we're certainly working to see both in Congress and with the new administration, what is the pandemic response going to look like? And how can we both make sure that there's a robust and inclusive response to address the harm? And a lot of that harm has been disproportionately felt in the Latino community. So making sure that things like access to testing and treatment are affordable and available for everyone, regardless of their immigration status. Certainly making sure that any stimulus payments, that should include everyone. So if you've paid taxes into our economy, whether that's with a Social Security number or an individual tax identification number, which many immigrants use in order to be able to make their contributions to the country, they should be receiving that stimulus if they qualify just like everybody else. So we were extraordinarily disappointed and remained shocked that there are US citizens and permanent residents who, because of a tax filing that they have with someone who uses an individual tax identification number, didn't receive that stimulus that was so critical for so many families. So we're continuing to talk with legislators about the need to correct that and to move forward to make sure that the recovery is inclusive. There's so much that can be done too in terms of, we don't want the sort of post-pandemic period to go back to looking the way it did, because what the pandemic has really exposed are the disparities that existed in our healthcare policies and in our healthcare system and in our economy. So we want to make sure that, post-pandemic, we have better policies. We have better protections for workers, especially essential workers, that there's better protections for people who are sick and need access to healthcare. So those are probably the areas that we see opportunities in the Congress. They're really, it's just absurd that more has not been done by the Congress in terms of responding to the needs of people across the country. And so we're continuing to push so that there is a legislative response, but certainly making sure that as people start to fill the roles that are so important in the Biden administration, that what can be done administratively or through executive actions on the issues of economic recovery, access to healthcare, and jobs are top of mind for our community.
Thank you, Laura, for that.
And if I
yes, please.
If I could intervene. And I think that Laura touched a very important point in terms of how the legislative branch of the government is the one that, in fact, needs to start moving forward some laws and regulations to allow a more playing field. But we need to remember that at this point in time, we are still waiting for the election results for the Senate in the state of Georgia. And without President Biden having the support he needs from the potential senators in Georgia, then his legislative agenda can be just trunked and go nowhere. So I think it is important also at this point in time for us to highlight that, to highlight the importance of the upcoming election on January 5th in Georgia, and for us to invite our friends and family, if we have any in that state, to be mindful of the importance of what is coming down the drain for them. They would basically have the power to determine the direction of this country in the next 4 years. Because without supporting the majority in the Senate, they won't be able to do what they intend to do as of today.
No, that's important, and every 2 years we have that opportunity. So let's keep pushing. No, Stacy, I want to ask you a very positive question. Okay, so you have to answer, because I know sometimes. We are. I speak for myself. I tend to speak about all the challenges and the difficulties that our community faces, because they are very real, and I want people to know what they are. I don't want to sugarcoat anything, so I'm not going to ask you to do that with the next question. But you have the unique opportunity when you talk to clients about their immigration case to really dive deep into their lives. I mean, you in order for you to help them, you have a really good understanding of a lot of things going on in their lives as they open up with you and tell you their stories. As we move forward, what do you see in your clients in the future? I mean, what do you think they're most hopeful for? How are they feeling about after the election? I mean, obviously they come to see you because they want to stay here and they want to build this dream or achieve this dream. What do you see? I mean, can you speak on behalf of some of them? Like, what do you think they see coming up in the next few months or in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are hopeful, right? That there will be some improvement on the immigration system. Frankly, the immigration system and getting legal status for my clients drastically changes their lives, right? So I think of a client that just received her lawful residency, or what people know as a green card, just last month. And when I was talking to her afterwards, she talked about how having her green card now means that she can go to college and she can become a nurse and help other people, right? These are practical, day-to-day changes for these people's lives, right? This girl came to the United States when she was 2 after being abandoned by her mother. She has been undocumented her whole life until now, right? She's going to graduate next month from her high school, and then we'll be able to continue on to college, right? Having that security of knowing that she couldn't just be deported at a whim, right? That she can be here, she can continue her established life. That's huge, right? And I have stories like that for so many clients throughout the years, right? And having an administration that is more friendly towards immigrants and is willing to give those immigrants that deserve to have legal status, to give them that status, right? After they've gone through the process and done the applications and that kind of thing, right? And actually getting that legal status, I think that that gives people some hope, and that they might actually see that light at the end of the tunnel and get that legal status, and not be sent back to a country that they might be fleeing violence, right? Or they don't have, for a lot of my kid clients, right? They don't have anyone back in their home country to take care of them. And so the thought of going back to their country is scary to them, just for that practical level. So I think that there's hope, and I think that there's hope for a better life, and getting that legal status.
Amazing. So on the few minutes that we have left, I'm going to ask each one of you to give some advice to those who are watching us, because clearly the three of you are amazing people that work day in and day out from three very different perspectives at the national level, on the ground, working with families through their faith or their congregation, or in their immigration proceedings, or in court or outside of court, at the local level. Each one of you are touching the lives of people every day and are making a difference. And for that, we are extremely thankful. But I think people who are watching us are going to say, well, what can I do, right? I mean, if you were to give some piece of advice to somebody who's watching us right now in less than 1 minute each, why would you tell somebody? Like, because I might say, like, hey, I don't live in DC, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a pastor, I still want to make a difference because I do feel like this is important. What can I do? So let's start with Bernardo.
Well, put in the hot spot. My advice would be, go and meet the people. Meet them, meet your neighbors, go to their places. Introduce yourself to them, and give yourself the opportunity to learn, to know, to meet wonderful human beings. We're talking here about lives and human beings. We're not talking about anything else, but people you can touch and feel and know and support and move forward with them. Go and know them, meet them. And that is, I cannot speak of any better way for you to really feel the sense of what it is to be hand on hand with another human being who is going through a number of things that most of us do not know and have never experienced. But when you have that chance, when you allow yourself that chance to go and look at somebody else in their eye and tell them, hey, there is a reason why you're here, and it's a marvelous reason, because you're being part of this new society that we are forming. Perhaps then, at that point in time, any prejudice, any differences that you can have towards the way these people are, perhaps can be moved away from your path, and then you can start building relationships that are going to last for many, many years, perhaps.
And it's what happens when you ask a pastor to speak in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, Stacy.
Yeah, if you're undocumented, talk to an immigration attorney. If you're a lawful resident and you're eligible for citizenship, apply for citizenship. Talk to an immigration attorney, apply for citizenship. For the general population, supporting local organizations that do this work is so vital. This is really hard work. This can be financial help, right? Donations help, right? But money's tight for a lot of people. But organizations like ours need pro bono attorneys, right? Of not just immigration, but other types, interpreters, etc. So definitely get involved. And if nothing else, throw some money our way.
Awesome. Laura, in 20 seconds.
You've got to share these stories with members of Congress and elected officials. I mean, Bernardo's point is right on. I mean, taking the stories of Stacy's clients, it's not about the acronyms. It's not about SIJS, TPS, DACA. It's about real people and making sure that our elected officials know who these people are.
That's all the time that we have. Thank you again for all of your work. Thank you for all the people watching us. Stay tuned. We love you. Happy holiday season. And thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Keep up the good work and buenas noches.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Gracias.